convert it to CD or MP3 format? Do you need a demo CD, radio ad, a DJ or even a sound system for your wedding, birthday or special occasion? Then why not get in contact with KTR Records on 07931 152 448 or check out our website on www.ktrrecords.com. We have been in business since 2004 and also undertake community projects. So for your remixes, dub bits and all your sound editing needs, why not contact KTR Records, official sponsor of World Jam Global Radio. KTR Records, come your way.
I was terrified about sharing the vulnerabilities of people with difficulties reading and spelling words. However, I can see the value in sharing, and I have taken the time to make some notes about this in my book, Dyslexic: The Silent Difference. You can get your copy now at www.a1tribe.com or amazon.com or amazon.co.uk. Thank you again, everyone, for your support.
Do you like music like this?
Great music all the time.
Or like this?
The music you love.
Maybe this.
Great music that makes you want to turn up the volume loud.
Or like this.
Especially where human life is concerned. Surely, sooner or later, people will realize that lives actually matter.
Then you're in the right place. Keep it locked to World Jam Global, where music is harmony.
Music 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah, World Jam. Hotter than them.
See live schedule.
It's for the people who are wondering why we're in the streets and we're outraged. It's basically a rundown of what's happened, and this is recent. And it's if you run, you die. Hashtag Walter Scott. If you stay and get arrested, you die. Hashtag Freddie Gray. Lay down while handcuffed, you die. Hashtag Eric Harris. Hashtag Oscar Grant. If you fight back, you die. Hashtag Trayvon Martin. If you mind your business, you die. Hashtag John Crawford. Put your hands up, you die. Hashtag Mike Brown. Proclaim your innocence, you die. Hashtag Eric Garner. Getting married, you die. Hashtag Sean Bell. Pansagging, you die. Hashtag Irvin Edwards. Beg for your life, you die. Hashtag Thaddeus McCarroll. Hashtag Cedric Barty. Just alive at 12 years old outside playing, you die. Hashtag Tamir Rice. Be outside, you die. Hashtag Rekia Boyd. Be at home chilling, you die. Hashtag Katherine Johnston. Run into your home, you die. Hashtag Ramarley Graham. Injured asking for help, you die. Hashtag Jonathan Farrell. Be in a stairwell, you die. Hashtag Akai Gurley. Smoke a cigarette, you die. Hashtag Sandra Bland.
Wow.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. Back in the day, I didn't really care about the system. It was all about survival. It was do or die. I had too many rivals. I was too young and foolish to stay in school. I learned my lessons in the street. There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life is so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. I I was a drug dealer, so more drugs than Superfly, but I never got high on my own supply. I'm not proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent, I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb, my brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in
I want to thank each and every single one of you that have joined me today. It's time for another edition of Issues Today, live on World Jam Global Radio. We have guests today, Royce Eckley, mother of Marcus Merrick Sr. We also have Mark Harper, private investigator. We're going to be talking about The Lies Won't Go Away.
already did my time, paid for my crime.
Say the big howdy to Vanessa Whirling, listening from San Antonio. Antoine Hunter, well, I think it's actually Antoine's mother.
Did my time, paid for my crime.
Really appreciate you being with us. We're going to have that story live right here very soon. Negotiating with Antoine's mother as we speak.
Already did my time,
So no matter where you're living, no matter where you're from,
already did my time. I paid for my crime. I'm trying to get
here's an opportunity to share. Share this stream live right across the world.
to live like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all of my friends in the pen. Statewide, worldwide. There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time.
Hope you're enjoying the new look studio.
Already did my time. I paid for my.
Spent a lot of time working on this one.
Already did my time.
Don't forget, if you've got a story that you'd like to share, you can direct message us, contact us on www.worldjamglobalradio.com.
I'm not proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb, my brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in common. I was the real Terminator, much meaner than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd shoot you up and spit you out like a real alligator, especially all you haters. Already did my time, paid for my crime. Already did.
I hope you're standing by for an absolutely explosive update.
I paid for my crime. Already did my time.
The opening statements are going on right
This is a story that we revisited on a few occasions now, and Mark Harper never fails to surprise us with his explosive discoveries.
Trying to cope with this living hell.
We're hoping to blow the case wide open once again today. And thank you all for joining us from whatever part of the world you're from.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Trying to cope with this living hell. This living hell. This living hell.
Want to say hi, how you doing, Lorraine Thompson?
I paid for my crime. Our Father who art in heaven,
It's always great to catch up with you, girl.
be thy name,
Big shout out to the vocalist on this track, Mr. Ronnie Canada himself,
earth as it is in heaven.
out there in Florida.
Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Favor my crown, favor my crown, favor my crown, favor my crown.
Please use this opportunity to share this show wherever you are, with all your friends and all the groups that you're involved with.
Stop it.
This is going out live from the UK, going out all over the world.
He who was out sin, let him cast
It's up an opportunity for families to tell their truth.
Trying to get this felony off my back. so I can get my life on track and have the right to vote and live like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all of my friends in the pen, statewide, worldwide, and put down those knives, stop stabbing each other. Yeah.
We have come to that time of the show where it's time to introduce our guests. First and foremost, let me just tell you once again, thank you each and every single one of you that are joining us for today's show. The Lies Won't Go Away. It's a story of Marcus Merrick. And before we go into that, I just want to remind you that next week we've got the irrepressible Stephanie Babb, whose brother, a war veteran, Brian Babb, who's also had his life taken by law enforcement. She'll be here next Saturday to be telling her story. So we thank her and we look forward to that show. But for today, let me first and primarily introduce our main speaker for today's show. It's the mother of Marcus Merritt Sr., and it is Royce Eckley. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time of the day it is on your side of the water. Royce, how are you doing?
I'm okay, Kervin. How are you?
I'm good. It's just great to catch up with you again. So,
yeah, it always is.
So would you just refresh our audience and remind them of who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing?
Okay. I'm, like Kervin said, I'm Royce Eckley. I'm Marcus and Kyra's mother. I live in Houston, Texas, and I've been on a quest for justice for my son for 6 years now. And I won't stop until that is obtained.
That has you as a very committed mother indeed. I mean, just a quick question. As a mother, where does that leave you? Because how many children do you have?
2.
You have 2 children, you have a family to run, you've got a life to live, but yet your conviction, your commitment, the sacrifices that you make in the pursuit of justice must be very time consuming.
It is. I mean, and I can't thank Mark from MJA Inc. enough for what he does, because he's taken a lot of the time consuming parts off of me, because I used to spend a lot of time emailing, calling, sending out packets, all kinds of things. I mean, that's how I found him, through email. And once we connected, he took some of that off of my shoulders, where, now I'll send out a few emails, and of course they're never answered. Those people out there pay no attention to me, because, we all know I'm just a mother who can't accept it, which isn't true at all. I'm a mother who knows that something was desperately wrong. So
I was just going to say, we're going to go into that. Something was desperately wrong very soon. But that pursuit of justice for you, and the time-consuming factor that we just talked about. How do you keep on going when you keep on getting these setbacks, these knockbacks, these non-acceptances of the facts and the truths as you discover them and relay them?
Just the conviction of, knowing who Mark was. I mean, I love him, and I'm not going to stop. I can be ignored all day long, just like I've told some of the people out there. If you can't help, won't help, that's fine by me. I'll just continue going to the next person, until I find the right person who will. You don't, you don't stop. You love your child. You don't. How can you stop?
Just before we go into start talking about Marcus and recapping on our previous shows, let's just introduce Mark, who you quite affectionately spoke about just a short while ago, for the one that's been absorbing a lot of that those issues for you and supporting you through this from MJA Inc. It's Mark Harper. Great to have you on board again, Mark.
It's always my pleasure.
Do you mind just introducing yourself once again and reminding our audience exactly who you are, what you do, how long you've done it for, so that we can get an understanding of what you're about?
Okay, I'm one of the founding partners of MJA Inc. Investigations. We started on June 1st, 2001. I had prior law enforcement experience as far as I was a controlled agent for 11 years for the U.S. government. I've done every type of case you can imagine. And me as a person, I've got 40 plus years in investigative work.
Wow, that's a whole lot of experience, right? And most of that experience, what was that actually involved with?
Well, like I said, I had a number of cases like drug cases, murder cases, suicides that turned out to be homicides. I mean, I've been involved in 380 death investigations, and that covers everything you can imagine.
And so when we start talking about, the conditions of the body and the causes of death, and autopsies and that kind of thing, how much experience have you had in that area?
Like I say, I've attended 380 autopsies.
So I think it'd be fair to say that you are a man of experience when it comes to dealing with matters surrounding death.
Yes, I know quite a bit about it. Yes, yeah.
Well, that's a great platform for us to start with, because when we start to unravel this case, as we often do, people will begin to realize that we're talking to someone and having somebody speak to us who knows what they're talking about. This is not guesswork.
No, no, not guesswork.
Very factual indeed.
Yes, we go where the evidence leads us, and where the evidence lies is, there it is. We can't forge it. We can't duplicate it. It's just the way it is.
So, before we go further and we start going into some of that evidence and facts, let's just talk a little bit about the young child that was your son, Royce. Introduce us to Marcus, the boy that you brought into this world and raised to be a man.
Okay. Mark was born on May 25th, 1975 at about 3:20 p.m. And he was a joy, I mean, he was a total boy, but, as a small child, he always talked to people, I mean, I've said before, I thought someone might steal him because he even like 2.5, 3 years old, he'd talk to anybody. He'd hold the door open for people, and like he was, all kids that I'm around, they amaze people because they're little, but I talk to them just like I'm talking to y'all. So in turn, that's how they talk back to you. And how adults would see him and they'd ask me, oh, how old is he? What's his name? And I said, he's standing right in front of you. Ask him that, and he'd answer them. And, and some people would say, well, referring to me, well, mama, and he'd tell them, her name is Royce, but yes, she is my mama, But I mean, he was a fun kid, as a small child, then, as a young boy, and then as a teenager, oh my God, he came into his own, and but he just did, teenage stuff that boys usually do, and he wasn't a bad kid, and he wasn't a bad person at all. Mark had a good heart. He was a fun person. He enjoyed life. He loved people. He loved family. And, he literally did not meet a stranger. I mean, he would talk to any and everybody, because I tell him, didn't I teach you not to talk to strangers? And, so I tell Mark all the time, I wish you could have known him. You would have liked him. I would have liked Mark had he not belonged to me, because he was just that type of person.
I mean, I suppose some neutrals who'd be watching, sitting on the fence, would think, well, yeah, you probably would say that he was your son, etc., blah blah blah. But what was other people's impressions and relationships with Marcus like?
Ask Mark. I mean, he's talked to strangers, and ask him what they've said about Mark.
Well, one of the things I got from interviewing people was that Marcus was a giving person. He was a lovable person. And if he would see something that wasn't right, he would step in the middle of it and try to correct it. And a lot of people, they've had a lot of encounters with Mr. Merritt that was very positive, nothing ever negative.
And that's a good thing to say. What was he like in school, Royce? As a pupil, what was he like?
He was really smart, but he was really stubborn. He would. One of his friends told me, Marcus makes me sick. And I was like, why? And he said, well, sometimes he doesn't come to class. He doesn't open that book. He doesn't study. And then we can have a test and he'll make 100 on it. I'm like, well, he's just lucky like that. He's smart. But he wouldn't, I don't know why he would be defiant with that, and I even went for a teacher conference one time, and the teacher told me, he was like, when I'm explaining it, I can see him. I watch his eyes. I know he gets it. He will not put it down on paper to save his life. I say, I don't know why he does that. I really don't. He could get progress reports and he'd be doing bad. A week and a half, 2 weeks later, he'd have an A or B. And I'm like, Mark, I'm going to knock your brains out. What, So he just, he was smart, book smart, and street smart, And like my daughter told me, he loved math, and she and I can't stand math. And her math teacher, when she got to high school, was Mark's. And she said he went, Kyra Merritt, are you Marcus Merritt's little sister? And she was like, yeah. And he told her, said, boy, that boy wouldn't come to class sometime. But he made hundreds on his test or whatever. And she told him, she said, I promise you, I will be here every day. I will study. I will do my homework, but I will never, ever make 100 on a math test. Yeah. So he was something else.
Before we carry on any further, it's safe to say that, I really do miss not having my co-producer, TJ Therese, on the show with me today, but she's not well. She's not been feeling well today, so she's at a very late hour. We decided that it would be best if she just rested rather than made herself any worse than she was, so I can get her back sooner rather than later. So, guys, while you're in prayer, while you're in thought, think of her and pray for her. She's really had a real tough year especially with her knee and her injuries, etc. So think of Teresa for me while we continue to carry on without her, because Teresa is so valuable and important to what I do here, and always on the sidelines prompting me and pushing me and coming up with stuff for me in the middle of the show that keeps the show fresh, alive and moving. So just bear that in mind as we carry on without her today. I miss her dearly. She's like my arm or something. Anyway, moving on, and not swiftly because that's the wrong terminology. Marcus also he was married, wasn't he? Was he married? Okay. So
yes.
First and foremost, I want you to tell me what your relationship was like with his wife, because I want to get that out before we go any, we get in it.
Okay. We were very close. I mean, she was not like my daughter-in-law. She was like my daughter. We talked every day. We text all through the day, multiple times. She told one of her coworkers one time, she was on the phone, and she said when she hung up, she was like, "Who were you talking to?" And she said, "My mother-in-law." She was like, "Y'all talk like that?" And she was like, "That's my ride or die." I mean, she would make sure I had all the new cleaning products. When I would go to Bath and Body Works, I would call her, and the people at Bath and Body Works, the employees would laugh because I would go, "Oh, have you seen this? Do they have that out there? Have you smelled it?" And I'd hold it up to the phone. And I goes, "Here, smell this." And she'd say, "Oh, yeah, that smells good." And I'd say, "Okay, I got you one." And, like she said, her and Mark would go somewhere and she'd be like, "Baby, smell this." And "I'm not your mother-in-law. I don't want to smell that. I'm not trying to get my allergies cranked up. No, call her and let her smell it." So we were really, really close. Yeah.
And what was the relationship like between Marcus and her?
As far as I knew, it was okay. I mean, all couples have their issues or whatever, but, I never got in their business. Whenever I would find out anything, it wouldn't be Mark that would tell me, it would be her, And so it was fine. I mean, they loved each other. They had 2 beautiful kids. They'd have barbecues and they had horses, and it seemed okay.
And how did they meet? Did you ever do you know how they met? When they met?
That's what my daughter and I would say. He literally married the girl from next door because her mother lived next door to mine, and her oldest son would be outside playing, and Mark would play around with him and all, and she told me later he'd tell him, "Where's your mama? Go get your mama." And she'd come outside, and they kind of started talking from then because her son was 3 and Mark had a son from a previous relationship, and I think he was 9 months old. And so they kind of started talking, from there, and then they started dating and, got together. And that's what I'm saying. We were extremely close. Like if Anthony, who was his 9-month-old, was sick, and I would take him to urgent care or whatever, emergency room, and Mark would be at work, she would go with me. I would call her and say, "Anthony's running a fever or he doesn't feel good. I'm going to take him to the emergency room. You'll go with me?" "Yeah, I got my blanket and my pillow. Come get me." And she would go with me. So, yeah, it's been strange.
And what was the relationship like between Marcus and her family?
he got along with her family. You know, like I said, they'd have you know, birthday parties, things at their house whenever her family was having stuff. You know, they'd be there. They you know, appeared to love Mark and interact with him. You know, I would even go out, like when I go out there, if they were having things, you know, I would go. And you know, so it was like one big family, you know, combined families. Her family and ours, you know, because we don't have a big family and she does. And, you know, like on Easter weekend, you know, I'd go out there and like they called it they were going on the park. And like on Fridays, they'd have fish and crawfish and, you know, pour it out on the table. And, you know, we'd all be in the park laughing and having fun. Then on Saturdays, I think that's when they'd have the barbecue. And, you know, it would just be a fun time. And it all went wrong. And I missed all of that.
What?
It was like when I lost Mark, I lost another entire side.
Yeah. You know, I get that. I'm really beginning to. I'm just feeling your pain, Royce. Just one more question on that, and then we're going to kind of move it along a bit more. What was your relationship like with her parents?
It was okay. You know, like I said, it was, we got along. You know, I would go to their house when I would be at Mark's house and they would come over, you know, we'd interact. And or if we went out to eat, you know, we didn't distance ourselves. You know, they've been to our house here in Texas. You know, like before I was married, her dad did some repairs on the house where I grew up. You know, like I said, it wasn't, you know how some families are like, oh, those are the in-laws or whatever. It wasn't like that. You know, it was just like everybody got along. Like her cousin even told me, she was like, I always loved yours and Astria's relationship and wish I had that with my mother-in-law. She was like, you know, you weren't always there, you know, like in their business or whatever, you know, but you came, and when you came, you know, you loved everybody, and everybody would come around you and feel that love that you had and all. And, you know, that's why I say it wasn't, you know, we're standoffish and we don't want to have anything to do with you. You know, we're just dealing with you because of them being together. It wasn't like that.
The reason I'm kind of doing it this way on this occasion is because I suppose some people will find, and we will get to it. When the incident first happened, you never thought anything untoward at first, did you?
No.
And I can understand why you didn't think anything untoward at first, because of the relationships, the long-standing relationships, that you had with them, that they had with you, and ultimately they had with each other. You often come across relationships where the in-laws are at war with each other, and you know, mama's girl, and so you know, the mom or the dad doesn't like the boyfriend or the husband. There's always that kind of suspicious or cautious behavior, etc. And I think when you hear about such a collective, loving relationship all round, It's so sad to see how that then transpires into what it became afterwards once we begin to unravel this story. Let me just quickly fire a question at Mark, if I can. In your investigations, Mark, as you were speaking to people, these relationships that Royce is talking about, its cohesion and love and togetherness, is that what your investigations was also uncovering?
Yes, before the incident happened, and then, like I said, it was like somebody threw a switch, and it's really hard to explain. And to me, being an investigator, I can explain it away, but I don't see how they can explain it away. Where she would have contact with him every day, and then all of a sudden, oh, nothing.
So that we save ourselves enough time, let us recap and remind our audience exactly how this thing went down. So, Royce, Mark, the clock starts now. Royce, firstly, tell us how you first heard, got involved with the ongoing, the story line as it relates to what happened to Mark on that fateful day.
Okay, at 6:16.
Let's build that up a little bit, shall we? What was going on that day?
Okay.
Where were you? Where was he? Where was Astria? As far to your knowledge.
I was at my daughter's house. She, as far as I knew, was at work. Mark, I thought maybe he was at work. I didn't really know. But I had a new grandbaby, and I was at my daughter's house, where I went every day, keeping him. And you want me to go ahead and tell you how I found out? Okay.
The story is yours to tell.
Okay. And then, like I said, we talked every day, so it was nothing strange for me to look at my phone and see her calling me. And so it was like I said, 6:16 p.m. on January 4th, 2013. She called me, and my cousin had come over. She usually would come to see Atticus, which was my new grandbaby, when she would be in the area getting her hair done. So she was getting ready to leave. By then, my husband had gotten home. Everybody had gotten home, my daughter, my son-in-law. And my phone rang, so it was her. And she said, I think Mark just did something to himself. And I was like, well, let me back up. I could kind of tell from her voice something was, wrong.
Yeah.
And so I kind of covered the phone and pointed at it and crossed over Dave's, who was my husband, legs, and just lipped to him, because I had a nickname for her. I used to call her Turf. And I told him, I said, this is Turf. I'm going to go in the garage so I can hear. And so I went out there and I said, what's wrong? And she said, I think Mark just did something to himself. And I'm like, wait, huh? I was like, no. Why would you think that? And she said, because we were texting and now I can't get him to answer. And I said, well, that's not strange. You know how Mark is. He doesn't, sometimes he just doesn't answer. He does,
Let's just pause that there, because
Okay.
if you are with somebody and you are texting each other and somebody then just stops texting, your first thought isn't, well, they must have done something to themselves.
Exactly. My granddaughter will text me, hey, because that's usually how she starts out every text, hey. And I'll say, hey. And then sometimes I'll say, what you doing? 4 hours later, she'll answer me nothing. Well, I didn't think she did something to herself.
No.
You know.
And if you're a couple and you're having an argument, the worst that you're going to think is, well, just wait till I get home. He ain't answering me now. He'll answer me when I get home.
Oh yeah.
You get me? Your first thought is not going to be, well, he must have done something silly or done something to himself.
Exactly.
My wife, right? We'll go back to the story in a minute, but my wife sometimes gets mad with me. She does. I know some people think I'm perfect. I'm not. I mess up sometimes. I annoy my wife sometimes. And then she starts texting me. And then as the texts start to get a little bit more insulting is the word that I prefer to use, I'll stop answering. She'll start calling and I'll stop answering because A, I'm at work, or B, I'm in company, or C, I just can't be bothered to listen to that anymore. So I know she's probably going to carry on when she gets home. So at least I'm going to do is have a little bit of peace before she does get home. So
exactly,
because otherwise she'll get on the phone and she'll be giving it to me all the way until she gets home. Then when she gets in the door, it carries on. It don't stop. So I just won't answer. I'll stop texting back. I'll stop. And sometimes my wife will go, you better answer. You better answer. You'll be sorry if you don't answer.
Oh, yes.
Now, if she's at home when I'm out, I know what that means. If she's at home when I'm out, it means that she's going to come and mess with my studio. She'll come in and cut my speaker wires or do something silly like that. So then when she tells me that, I'll then pick up the phone and I'll answer to stop her from doing, you know what I mean? But if I was at home and she was out, I wouldn't do a thing. But what I would do is probably wait 10, 15 minutes. Then I'll ring her back and say, are you okay? Are we okay? Yeah? Once I've had a bit of...
Like you said. Right. Like you said. Like you say, that's what couples do. To show you another perfect example, one time Dave and I were into it. You know, we had been texting and then he stopped, and I called. He wouldn't answer. So I called T-Mobile and had his phone turned off.
But that's what we do. But I'm not about to go and phone her daughters or her mother or somebody else and go, oh, by the way, she ain't answering her phone anymore. I think she gone done something stupid.
Right, exactly. And that's what I told the representative. I was like, if you're not going to answer me, then you're not going to answer anybody. Turn his phone off. And she was like, uh-oh.
So let's just go back to the story. So you and her are talking on the phone. She's called you and she's told you, I think Marcus has done something to himself. Where did that? How did you respond to that?
That's what I told her. I was like, no, I mean, why would you think that? I said, when she said they were texting and now she can't get him to answer. And that's what I said. You know how Mark is. He just stops talking. I said, especially if y'all are into it, he's not going to say anything. You know that. And so she said that she was leaving work. She had called her parents to go over there. And check.
Why would she leave work and call her parents? Why would she not just call you first?
Huh?
Why would she leave calling her parents first? Why wouldn't she call you first? He's your son.
Well, I mean, why call me, period?
No. But stop a second.
Answering.
Stop a second. Why call your parents when she's got a good enough relationship with you that she could call you? He's your son. If she thought there was some... Forgive me for just trying to point out the obvious, right? His relationship is tighter with you than it would be with her mother and father. So why would she not call you if she thought he had done something wrong before she called her mum and dad? Is there a reason why she would call them first?
Well, let's back up more. Why call either of us? Why not call 911 if you thought he had done something to himself? I'm in Texas. What am I going to do from Texas? It's going to take me 3.5 hours to get there. If you think he did something to himself, call 911 and then leave work and call your parents.
Okay, so you're on the phone with her. She's on about he's done
Right.
something to himself.
Right.
So where did she say she was going?
Like I said, she told me she was leaving work and she had called her parents. She was leaving work to take them the key, and they were going to go over to the house to, see what was going on. Well, I knew about how long it took her to get home. So, like I said, she told me she was leaving work. Um, we're on the phone. I didn't hear anything. Well, no. I told her, I said, hold on a minute. And I clicked over and I called Mark, and I was like, answer, 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 answer. And he didn't answer. Well, I clicked back over and I told her, I said, well, now he's not answering me either. But I didn't think anything of that because I was like, I know him. I know what he's saying. Yeah, now she even called mama. And I'm not and I'm not gonna answer her either.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I didn't if I wasn't talking, there was no talk. I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear where she said she was leaving work. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear.
Now,
I have to.
let's go back a bit, right? Because our audience needs to understand what that means. Astria worked in a hospital, right?
Right.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, unless she works in the only hospital that doesn't have hollow chambers, right? You're going through a corridor. You're in a hospital. I'd imagine that she's not the only person in the hospital. She cannot be in an entire building all by herself, right?
Not unless it's an episode of Halloween and Michael Myers is lurking around the corner somewhere.
So she is coming all the way from work, coming down the corridors of the hospital, leaving the hospital, coming through the door, reception, emergency exit, whichever door she was going to leave from, going to the car park to go and get her car. And in all of that time, you heard not a sound, not a voice of somebody else, no doors opening and closing and banging, no keys jangling.
No.
There was there's no commotion that would suggest that she was in a crowded building or a busy building or something that would represent a hospital.
No.
Okay.
Nothing.
Carry on for me, please, Royce.
Okay. So then, like I said, I didn't hear a car door close. I didn't hear a car start up. I didn't hear driving noises.
Now,
I didn't hear
let's just back up right there. So how long did that journey take her? About 20 minutes?
It usually took her maybe 25, 30 minutes to get home.
And in all that time she was driving,
and let me back you.
Go ahead.
Let me back you up. And I knew that because I talked to her every night when she got off at 10 o'clock. Every night she would call me and I would ride home with her.
Okay. And what would you normally hear while you were riding home with her?
Noises. I mean, we'd be talking. Sometimes I could hear the radio. Sometimes she'd stop. She had ordered pizza. I'd hear her going to the pizza place. I always heard the ding, ding, ding of, when she'd take off her seatbelt. And I would say, are you home yet? No. I said, put that seatbelt back on. I've told you, you don't take seatbelt off till you pull up in your driveway. So like I said,
In other words, all the customary noises that you'd expect to hear on a driving experience, you didn't hear on that night, on that day.
No.
So
I didn't hear anything.
So at the time while you was talking to her, did that resonate with you? Was you conscious of that?
At all, not at all.
Because
I didn't even think about
I'd imagine
it
at
later.
the time you was just focused on what it was that she was saying to you.
Right.
Okay. Please pray carry on.
Okay. So like I said, it was quiet, and I asked her, I said, are you there yet? And she was like, no. Okay, so back quiet. Um, then I asked her a few minutes later, I said, "Are you there yet?" And she, "Yeah, I'm here." Okay, like I said, no ding, 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 no nothing, no
No car door,
mumbling,
no keys.
no, no. And I asked her, I said, "Are your parents there?" And she was like, "Yeah, they're here." I didn't hear any exchanges, nothing. And by exchanges, like I said, we used to talk every night when she would get off work. And when she would get home, I couldn't hear what he would say, but I could hear like Mark's mumbling, like it, because it would sound like a mumble because he wasn't talking right to me. But I would know what he said from her answer. And what he would ask her is, "Who are you talking to?" Because she would go, "Your mama."
Yeah.
But I didn't hear anything, nothing. But like you said, I didn't even think about that. Well, you know, by now like I said, I was in the garage and I hold my phone on my left ear. So I have my right finger in my right ear. Like I have my right ear stopped up and I'm listening. And what people have told me is you were listening for one voice, his, because even though I didn't know what was going on or what, I started getting shaky inside because I'm like, something's not right. Something's not right about this. And I asked her, she said, they're not coming out. And I said, well, just give them time. They're probably in there trying to see what's going on, trying to talk to him or whatever, just give them a little time. And then quiet again, just quiet. We're just sitting on the phone, quiet. So then she said it again. She said, they're still not coming out. And I said, again, just wait. I said, because you know how Mark can be sometimes, just give them time. Well, I'm really shaking inside. And about this time, my daughter had come out into the garage. And like my back, I was standing right in front of the washing machine in her garage. And my back was to her. And she said, "Mama." And about that time, she said, no, it was still quiet. And I turned and looked at her. And she started coming toward me. No, she said, "Mama." And I didn't move. And then she went, "Mama." And I turned around and looked at her. And my sister said, whatever she saw on your face made her start coming toward you, because she started coming toward me, but it seemed like she was coming in slow motion. And at that time, Astria said, "He did." And then she, just like that. And her stepmother took the phone and said, "Royce, I'm sorry." And, for a minute, I just stood there. And that's what I've told you. It's just like what you've heard people say. In that second, or how long it took for that to register in my brain, I remembered finding out I was pregnant. I remembered seeing my body grow. I remembered feeling him move. I remembered him being born. I remembered him as a little boy. I remembered him as a grown man. I remembered his hugs. I remembered everything about him. And then it hit my brain and I said, that's it. It registered. This is it. I want none of that ever again on this earth will I see. And I could feel it come from my stomach. and my mouth opened and something came out of my mouth I had never ever heard before. It was just like a wounded animal. That's the only way you can describe it. And I didn't even realize the phone had fallen off my ear until I saw my daughter looking on the ground. And she was just hanging on to me, saying, "Mama, stop. Mama, please stop." And her husband came outside and he had his arms around both of us. And I didn't hear what he said, but I heard her voice in my ear, and I knew he must have asked her what's wrong, because her little voice went, "I don't know." But she knew what she was witnessing could only be something about her brother, and it couldn't be good.
Can I just ask you a question? In that moment that you comprehended, you actually got an understanding of what it was that was taking place, and you talked about what it coming from almost very well. I'll paraphrase, almost like the pit of your stomach. It came from. It was a noise of something that you could never put a name to, and it's not something that you can genuinely just automatically recreate either. When Astria was obviously informed that Marcus was no longer alive by whomever she claims went in to check and then come out and tell her, what noise was she making?
That little noise that I made for you.
Give it to me. Yeah. So there was
like that.
There was no wailing. There was no
no
because
no
because you'd have expected, whether or not she suspected that he had done something silly or not, the reality of finding out that he actually did would have prompted and provoked some emotions of pain, loss, grieving, that would have had her in at least an uncontrollable sob. Because let's just get this right, not only had he befriended and shown love to her son, whom he had known since he was a child, they had also had 2 children together. So it wasn't that it was a case of they were just in a relationship or they were just married and he was just playing daddy to her son, right? They actually raised children together. They had a family. They lived as a family. Her son, their children, one home, right? So therefore, right, up until that moment, there was nobody filing for divorce. They weren't separated. They weren't sleeping in separate beds, right? There weren't no restraint orders on each other. There was nothing terrible taking place. So that at that moment in time, for her to have called you, right, and playing the loyal, faithful, loving wife, you'd have expected, if that's the condition that she was in and that was her mindset, then when she arrived there and somebody told her that the love of her life, the father of her children, is now dead, that she would be in some form of an uncontrollable sob, and her mother and father trying to comfort her, calm her down, and get her out of a state of shock, at the very least. Not this quiet little whimper that you'd get if somebody just killed your hamster.
No.
But you never heard that noise from her.
What you just described is what the mother of his first child did when I called her and told her.
Now, let's just talk about that for a minute. So you've called the mother of his first child, whom he had not been with for how many years?
Anthony was, Anthony was 14. So they hadn't been together since he was about, what?
Roughly.
Year and a half, 2 years.
So
2 years old.
They had not been he was 2 years old?
Yeah, they were.
So we're talking about 12 years. They hadn't been together in a relationship for about 12 years.
Right.
And you call her to tell her the mother of the person that she used to be with 12 years ago has just passed away. And she goes into an uncontrollable sob.
Oh, my God. Her name is Michelle. And I just kept screaming, Michelle, Michelle. She was screaming. She told me she felt like she had a heart attack. She said, When you told me that, it knocked me off my feet. I fell onto the bed.
Wow.
And she said, like, she left that house and the dishes, the food, everything stayed for like 2.5, 3 weeks. Just stayed exactly like it was when I had called her.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, the mother of his child, whom he hadn't been with 12 years, is in an uncontrollable state, felt like she was having a heart attack, and you're in a conversation with his wife, the mother of his 2 children, and she must, let's just get it right, it takes, any man can give birth, but he also played father to her child, whom he wasn't a father to.
Right.
And yet, there was very little emotion coming from her. Okay. Tell us some more.
Okay, so like I said, my son-in-law was holding on to me, and you know, eventually I told my daughter, I was like, call him, you know, when I saw she found my phone, I said, call him back, you know, maybe it's not true. And so she called back, and I don't even remember what she said or whatever, you know, and I was just looking at her. And when she hung up, I said, it's true. And I start, like, round 2 started, you know, I'm out of control again. And finally, I told them, I said, I have to sit down because I feel like I'm going to pass out. And, you know, so we went in the house and I sit down, and I guess I called people because one of my best friends, I didn't even know until like a few years ago, you know, when we were talking about it. And she said, yeah, because Royce, when you called me, and I was like, wait, I called you? And she said, yeah, you called me and told me, and I kept saying, what? I said, I don't remember calling you. And she said, yeah, you called me. I said, I thought somebody else told you. And she said, no, you called me and told me. You know, and I don't, some parts I remember, some parts I don't. And you know, like I said, I went in the house. I remembered sitting down and just, I don't know. It's very surreal. It's very surreal to me to this day. You know, I was like, what do I do? You know, at that time, I didn't know, you know, but I knew I didn't understand what they were saying, you know, that Mark had taken his life. But I didn't question it. I mean, I didn't understand that, but I didn't question it. I had no reason to question what they were telling me.
Just very quickly, Mark, as we go into this, was this response from Astria while she was just being told that, or having it confirmed that Marcus had supposedly taken his life, does this ring suspicious to you as well, or are we just having wild imaginations here and going overboard?
No, it's very suspicious, and also it's very suspicious in the way it happened. I believe there was things said at the hospital that when she was talking to Marcus on the phone, so she would actually have witnesses to verify what was said. And yeah, it was all suspicious.
So where did it go from there? So you've got the mother and the father and Astria. I take it outside the house. Because we really want to get into some of the fresh information. I just want to try and find a way to tie this up so we can go on to what Mark revealed to us at the end of the last show, and then try and get into what Mark's going to unravel on this show.
Like I said, the phone call ended. I was...
Okay, so at that point...
our part of the call was over.
Okay, so let's now go to this point now. At what point did all of this now begin to not make sense to you?
It was 2 weeks later.
So for 2 weeks, you were convinced that everything that Astrid had said to you was correct. You were, there was no concerns, there was no suspicions. For 2 weeks, you were just grieving for the loss of your son.
Yeah, I was just like Dave told me. He said, yeah, you just kind of pretty well hung out on the couch, and I told him, I said, sometime I would look at the stairs, like I was going to go to bed, and I'd go, yeah, that's going to take too much energy. And I'd just go lay back on the couch. Back up. In that 2 week time, we've had the funeral. And even that was weird, but it's like I said, now that I look back on it, it's like God was like, you're here, but you're not.
God was protecting your heart.
Right. He was like, you're seeing things and you're taking it in, but it's not registering to you, but you've lost your son,
right. You're in shock and you're grieving. Nothing's real.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is just like a mist in front of you.
Right. But you're paying more attention to things than you realize, like I said, okay, we got there. This happened on a Friday. We got there Saturday because, my husband kept saying, we've got to go. And in my head, I think I was telling myself, you have to go, but as long as you stay in Texas, it can be real. When you get there, then I think it'll be real. I don't even remember the ride there. I don't even, I know we went the same way that we always went, but I don't even remember riding there. And so we got there, went to her parents' house, and, again, she kind of, I don't even remember really if she did cry when I saw her. I honestly don't remember that. But I went in the room where she was, and I, kind of wanted to know what happened, and she said, we were talking, and I heard, she said, we were talking, and then I couldn't get him to answer, and I just looked at her. I said, what are you talking about? And I said it just like that. I said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, my phone kind of went bzzz, and then I couldn't get Mark to answer, and I heard him say, ugh. And I said, that's not what you told me. I said, you told me y'all were texting, and then you couldn't get him to answer. I said, are you now saying Mark did this in your ear? And she said, yes. And I said, that would be heartless. I said, and he wasn't heartless. And then she didn't say anything else. So I asked, I said, what was he texting you? Where's his phone? What was he texting you? And she said that something about his phone was broke, or it had blood on it or something. I can't remember. Somebody took it. I don't remember. But let's just stop. Let's just pause there for a minute.
Let's pause there for a minute, Royce, because if in part of her evidence and statement that she was giving that her concern for Marcus was because there was communication between the two of them, and that they were texting each other, and that made her suspicious as to what he probably did. Would those texts and that phone not be important in the police, for the police to have a look at, for them to be able to ascertain, get an understanding of what his mind frame would have been like, for them to be able to justify whether or not it was possible that he took his own life or something else happened? Wouldn't that have been evidential? Sorry, let's just bring Mark in for a minute. Mark, would that not have been evidential if that's what we're talking about? And she's saying that there was communication going on between her and him and then he stopped and she was worried, which is why wouldn't the police want access to that phone so they could have a look at those texts and see what was being sent between the two of them for them to corroborate what was going on here with her version of events?
Oh, yes. They should have took control of the phone. They should have looked at the text messages to get an idea of what was going on. And, that'd been the number one thing since they were on the phone off and on.
So where is the phone?
That's a good question.
This phone that the two of them had been corresponding on, and the phone that he had in his possession prior to him doing whatever she said that he did, that she was communicating with him, right? Where is this phone?
We have no idea.
Yeah, and they haven't answered, law enforcement hasn't answered to where that phone is.
So there's absolutely no way on this planet that we can corroborate her version of events as according to what took place on that phone between her and him.
No, that's what I mean. Without recovering that phone, we have no idea of what was being said. We only have an idea of what was said while she was still at the hospital. There is witnesses to that. But, law enforcement, they haven't denied they have the phone, and they haven't said they had the phone. But they know that's one of the very interesting points that we want to look at.
Here's the thing. We've got one of our roundtable guests who's actually joined us on this call, and I'm going to see if he's available and wants to make a quick comment. Patrick Lane, are you there? I think, Royce, you know Patrick?
Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Royce. I'm here. And it just, again, I hate coming onto these shows. I love being here, but there's so many consistencies in all the stories, and phone records and recovering phones seems to be almost a standby when there's some type of suspicious activity. We don't get that. We haven't gotten Taylor's phone back for 5 years. We haven't gotten any other phones. So I can totally empathize with Royce and what she's going through, just trying to get a record, just trying to, and what they've done. I don't know about Mark's case, and I wanted to get back to that because this is an amazing story as she gets into it. But what they've told us is that when we go to pursue these phones, they tell us that, well, technically the case is still open, so they're just going to hold on to it. So that way, our counsel hasn't been able to see the phone messages or phone records, and no one has but the department. So I just want to go more into this story because it gets even more difficult as we go along. And Royce, my heart goes out to you.
And mine goes right back to you. And look,
just one second, Royce.
Okay.
Patrick, I'm going to bring you back in a while, but I just wanted to make one point. At least you know that they've got the phone. The point that Mark is trying to make here is that they have still yet to concede that they have this phone, and they haven't denied that they've got this phone. So at this precise moment in time, neither does Royce or Mark know whether they have the phone or not, or if the phone is in existence, or if it got thrown out of a window, or if the aliens from another planet took it back with them. Nobody knows where this phone is. So, I mean, I'm absolutely with you on this, Patrick. I get it. But for Royce here, she actually is totally unaware of the existence or the whereabouts of the phone, full stop. And the police are actually not saying whether they've got it or not, which obviously stands in the way of...
Right. Well, and what I was going to say to Patrick is, like he said, Taylor's case is still open. Well, supposedly Mark's is close. Kind of way, we've gotten the call log, but just so happened there are no text messages in there. I want those. I want to read those.
So you've got the call log, but no one's released the text messages. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have the text messages.
That's suspicious in itself. Okay, so
Very.
at that point you kind of get, you realize that there's something wrong with the story. Did you challenge? No?
No. Remember I told you we got to back it up.
Okay. Back it up.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, you know, we had the funeral. Back it on up further. I wanted to bring Mark home because he was from Texas. He wasn't from there. And that was, you know, what I wanted to do. And like I said, after we talked or whatever, I told her, I said, I want to take Mark home. And she just looked at me. You know, she didn't say anything. She just looked at me. And, you know, and then we, you know, talked a little bit more or whatever. And then I went in the kitchen where her stepmother and her daddy were. And I asked her stepmother, I said, can you tell me what you found when you went in that house? I said, she said, and I'm going to talk just like she did. Well, I can tell you. And I said, was it horrible? And she said, no, it wasn't horrible. Okay, now, you have to think about that. How was it not?
How could it not be horrible if somebody has used a lethal weapon to take their life and blow their brains out?
But how could it not be horrible that you discovered someone you love deceased? How could that not be horrible?
Listen,
period.
Let me just stop you there for a second. I've worked as a support worker for many years, and on one occasion, I actually had to go to the morgue to identify the body of a homeless guy that used to be in our hostel. He was not known to me as a family friend or member or anything else. He was just a guy that came to our hostel, but he had no family members. So the police asked if I would come and identify the body. And that was horrible. That was horrible. I didn't even know him apart from the days that I'd seen him at the hostel. We had no emotional connection. We had no family attachment. We had no connection outside of my work. And neither did we have any kind of great rapport to turn around and say that, well, we were tight. I weren't even his support worker. Right? But yet, that experience of just having to go and identify the body, I thought was a really terrible, a terrible thing. It had me feeling cold. It had me feeling emotional. I felt something for the body that was laid there. I thought about the family members that probably don't know he's there. And when they do find out, they're going to realize it's too late. They can't even come and, you know, comfort themselves or him. Or a lot of thoughts went through my mind. It wasn't easy.
Right.
And that's somebody I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. So she said, no, it wasn't horrible. You know, I can tell you. I said, yes, tell me. I want to know. So I asked 3 questions, which I had no idea those 3 questions that I was asking would have meaning down the line. I asked her, was he sitting? Did he leave a note? And were his eyes closed? She said, no, he was laying next to the bed. She said something about his legs, but I don't remember what that was. He didn't leave a note, and she closed his eyes.
She closed his eyes. That's an important factor, so let's hold it there. She closed his eyes. Her words to you. Okay, carry on.
And then her daddy chimed in and he said he was reading the Bible when he did this, so he should have known it was wrong. And I just turned and looked at him. And in my mind, I thought, but I didn't say anything. In my mind, I thought, I was told Mark was home by himself. How the hell do you know what he was doing?
How would he know what Mark was doing?
Right. So, we went on, like I said, Dave and I went on to the hotel and spent the night. And Astria called me that Sunday morning, all crying. And I'm thinking, oh, it's because of Mark, what's going on, and I was like, what's the matter? What's the matter? And she was like, they're all going to church and they're going to leave me by myself. And I was like, wait, I said, everybody's going to church and they're going to leave you? And she was like, yeah. And I said, well, just calm down. I said, ask them to stay there until we can get there, and I'm on the way. Now, keep in mind, I'm the big bad monster nowadays, but I'm the person she called that Sunday because she thought they were going to leave her there by herself. So I told her, like I said, just calm down, ask them to stay with you until we get there, and we're on the way. So when we got there, her stepmother and her daddy were there, and I was like, I thought they were going to church. And she was like, it ended up being her brother and her sister-in-law, and they took the kids to church. And I was like, oh, okay. So, we were there at the house, and like I said, this had happened on a, Friday evening. Dave hadn't had a chance to notify work or anything. And so he told me, he said, I'm going to have to start heading back. So, tomorrow I can let them know what's going on and come back or whatever. Well, I had packed enough, I was going to be there until whenever. And so I said, okay. And, by this time there's, different family, neighbors, milling around, whatever there. And Astrid was laying on the couch. And so he told her, he said, I'm going to go. He said, but I'm leaving your mama here. Y'all take care of each other. Y'all watch out for each other. And then, I'll be back. And she was like, okay. And I told her, I said, I'm going to go walk Dave outside. I'll be right back. So I went, to walk him outside. I'm on the way back in. My oldest grandchild's mother called me. Now, keep in mind, I've been there since the night before. I've told her that I want to take Mark home. Nothing has been said or what have you. She calls me and she says, Mama, you're not going to be able to bring Mark home. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, I told her I want to, bring him back home. And she didn't say no. She said, Mark's funeral is next Saturday. And I said, what? Nobody has told me that. I said, what? Let me go in the house and I'll call you back. I don't know what you're talking about. So I step back in the house and she's in hysterics. It's not fair. What about my children? She's gonna take him. It's not. And I held up my hands. I said, what happened? What is wrong with her? What happened? I said, I'm not taking him. I said, I want to take Mark home. He's not from here. And she, like I said, she's all in hysterics. All of this is going on. And then, her dad says, well, she's made her decision. She wants him here. And I just threw my hands up. I said, oh, and then he said, she's his wife. And I said, and I'm his mother. And now I'm in hostile territory. And she said, why do you say that? And I said, because all of y'all are up in here with this, and I'm here by myself. Because Dave had just left. The atmosphere shifted that fast from him leaving and me coming back in the house. So I just sit down on the couch, and I don't know how long it was. my cousin called me, and I don't know what I said to her or what she heard in my voice or whatever. And she said, "Do you need me to come out there?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Okay, let me pack, and me and Steph will be on the way. We'll be there as soon as we can get there." And to this day, Dave tells me, "I hate you didn't tell me that, because I would have turned around," because he had stopped for gas. And he called me to see if everything was okay. And I told him, yeah, it was. And he was like, "Why didn't you tell me that?" And I said, "I don't know. It wasn't because it was meant to play out just like it did." So from like I said, it takes about 3.5 hours to get there. So for 3.5 hours, I sat on that couch and nobody said anything to me. I was just like some neighbor that had come to visit or pay my condolences or what have you. You know, people just walked past me, arrangements were being made, all this kind of stuff. Nobody said nothing to me, except her son and her real mother. Her real mother said, "I knew your mama. She was a very nice lady." She said, "And Marcus would want to be buried next to his grandmother." I said, "I know that." And then her son said, "Grandma, my daddy would want to go to Houston." I say, "I know." He said, "But I'm just a little kid and nobody will listen to me." I said, "I know." And he said, "Nobody is talking to you?" And I said, "No." And he said, "It's okay. It's okay, Grandma. It'll be all right." I say, "Yeah, I know." So I just sit there on the couch.
Wow. The most heart-wrenching experience a mother could ever have is not being able to at least be able to bury her child. Robbed of that very honor and privilege, having already lost your child before you, because most parents don't want to die before they want their child to die before them. They don't expect their child to die before them. But if your child does die, or has an whatever, that's where you expect to be. You're the mother. You take charge. That's what mothers do.
But see, that was like that wasn't my intention to go there and take charge.
No, but that's what mothers do, and that's what most people would expect a mother to do. Most people would expect a mother to take charge.
Yeah, but no, that's why I want to let you know that wasn't.
No, I get that. I get that, but to be denied the. Sorry, go on.
Right. Let me explain it to you. I knew my place. I was his mother, yes, but I knew he had a wife, and that's what I told her later. It was never my intention to come here and, do whatever. You as his wife, that was for you to do. But me as his mother, at least I could have had some input into that. No, that was not my intention. Like I said, I knew my place and I respected my place and hers. And like I told her, your title could have possibly changed. My title never will change. I'll always be his mother.
They can't take that away from you. Listen, Royce, we are probably half an hour away from finishing the show. I really want to be able to get Mark in. Is there anything else Is there anything else that we want to bring it up to date with before we bring Mark in? First of all, I'm going to want Mark to update us on the fresh information he gave us at the end of the last show, and then bring us up to date with what he wants to bring in today. But is there anything else that you feel is significant and important enough that we don't want to miss right now?
Yeah, like you said, I didn't know anything. I didn't suspect anything was wrong. And that Monday, I saw Mark, and I still couldn't figure it out because I thought I was getting ready to see him, in a coffin or whatever. But I was taken in that room and he was on a gurney. And when I followed the pastor to the room, I stopped at the door because I was like, wait a minute, and it hit me that my friend, who's a physician assistant, had made me promise her not to see Mark. And then I'm like, okay, from what they've told me, he's going to be all messed up. I'm never, ever going to forget this, oh my God. And my cousin asked me, she said, "Are you going in?" And I said, "Yes, I'm going in." And when I walked in there and saw him, there was nothing wrong with him. I mean, his face wasn't messed up, his head wasn't messed up. There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. And again, I could not understand that. I'm like, okay, he shot himself. What am I looking at, Mark? I don't understand what I'm looking at. And then his mouth came open just a little bit, and I could see his teeth. And I was like, I could hear my voice in my head, and I was like, there's nothing wrong with his teeth. So, yeah, go ahead and let Mark talk to you now.
Do you know, Mark, everything that Royce
Yeah.
has shared with us up to date just tells us that these lies won't go away. She's laid down the platform of the type of person that Marcus was. She's told us what he was as a child, as a husband, as a son, as a family man, as a father, as a man that you guys have shared what he was like in the community and how well people spoke about him, and all the wonderful things that were said about him throughout his years. And then we get to this point where all of a sudden we've got Astrid on her way home claiming that Mark has done something to himself. And everything that happens from that moment up until the moment his body is found just doesn't make sense. It sounds like a completely fabricated story. But at the end of last show that we did, which was, I think, at the beginning of this year, you blew us away with some fresh information, which really opened it up. Do you want to refresh us with that information first before we move on to the latest unraveling?
Yes. The last thing we spoke about was the blood evidence. We done further analysis on the death room photos, and with my experience from all the investigations I've done, there is signs that somebody was in the room with Mr. Merritt. I don't know how the state of Louisiana is going to get around that because there's definite proof. I've had experts look at it. Matter of fact, this last report I just got, I was trying to tweak everything we had to make it better. And so I turned over everything to a mechanical engineer. And the first thing that stood out to her is she calls me up and she says, "Mark," she says, "are you testing me?" And I says, "No, this is for real case." And she says, "Well, I can just tell you right now." And I said, "What?" She says, "It's a homicide." And I said, "Okay, before you get carried away," I said, "analyze the pictures and do your report and all that." Well, when her report came out, she hit on the same points that I hit on. The blood evidence doesn't match a suicide. Okay. There's blood patterns that are what they call forward spatter and backward spatter. And she drew a diagram for people to be able to understand it. Well, all indications is that Mr. Merritt bled out on the bed. Well, the thing of that is he's found upright next against a dresser with his head up. Okay, being a mechanical engineer, they do physics, laws of gravity, and all that. Mr. Merritt's body couldn't do 180 turns, and he wouldn't have been upright with his head looking up. His head would have been down. And so there we go with the laws of gravity. And like I said, she more or less said that to her, he wasn't killed with a pistol. There's no stippling. There's no stippling on the outside of his face. There's no stippling on the inside of his mouth. And they show a wound, what we're supposed to believe is a gunshot wound. Well, there's no stippling around it. On a contact wound with a weapon, you have all these excess powder and gas. That's called stippling. There's a contact wound. There was none present. So her conclusion was that he died from some type of blunt force trauma, and she said she not to rule out a butt of the gun or a knife being used. the puncture wound in his mouth, what they say is where the bullet entered. It's just like a bruise. It could have been a bruise for anything. And to me, there's only a couple of weapons for that wound. And one of those weapons happens to be a 4-inch ice pick. And
sorry, Mark, you're just going in and out of signal at the moment. We're catching some words, but not everything. Your signal's a bit weak. Can you just? Is there any way that you can put yourself in a better position so we don't miss none of this?
Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. From the wound that they show, it looks like a puncture wound. It doesn't look like a bullet wound or a stab wound. It's a puncture wound. And then once again, we go back to the blood evidence. It doesn't match what you would see in a suicide. There is blood that, if he was in the position they claim, there's blood behind Mr. Merritt. That's not possible.
How could they be blood behind him?
Exactly. Also, there was things that he was reading the Bible. Okay, from the position of the body and where the Bible is found, the Bible was behind him. And there's also, beside the Bible, there is 3 droplets of blood, which is gravitational blood drops, which that means somebody was in a position bleeding and it naturally hit the floor. Okay, those 3 gravitational blood spots would be behind Mr. Merritt. So it's not Mr. Merritt's blood. And same way with the cast off. When you kill yourself, you're not casting off blood. Blood cast off is from a moving object as you're doing the attack. And so that's what I mean. We're wondering, okay, we wanted the body exhumed. We got that done. Our next thing is we want a death inquest or a grand jury to hear the evidence. And now we want the text messages, since they turn around and they still ruled his death a suicide. That means it's a closed case. That means any Freedom of Information Act should be abided by because it's not an open investigation. Well, they keep hiding stuff. They keep hiding text messages. They're still hiding photos from us.
Mm-hmm. Let me say something real quick, and it might echo. It's like I told Mark, we've been saying all of this stuff, but this expert tied everything in a nice little bow for us. Yep. They've said how he was found sitting up. She said there's no possible way. Gravity won't do that. And I was like, oh my God. I showed Dave, I said, if he was leaning on that bed or anything, he would have been found on that bed or laying next to it after gravity pulled his weight and body off. I laid on our bed 4 different times and slid off. And all 4 times I wound up laying down. I never wound up sitting straight up. It's not possible.
No, and especially when you have to do a 180-degree turn. It's just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, explain to the audience what that 180-degree turn would mean. What position was he in initially, did they claim, and then what position did he end up in?
Okay, let's say you're kneeling at the bed, you're praying, you got the Bible there. Okay, now the dresser is off to the right of you. Okay, you shoot yourself. Okay, you're right-handed. Okay, you fall to the right. Okay, all the blood spatter is all over the comforter of the bed. Okay, the blood around Mr. Merritt has to be from another person. And what I mean by a 180-degree turn is he's facing the bed, okay, instead of doing a 360 where you go all the way around, his body went halfway, which would be 180 degrees to lean up against the dresser and be looking up. It's just it defeats the laws of gravity. It defeats the laws of motion. Um, that's why we have experts to check this. So it's just not me saying, well, this happened and that happened. I want my evidence to be backed up, have it backed up by other experts. And
but here's the thing: we're also saying that him shooting himself in the mouth, or whatever, didn't take place.
well, I can honestly say at this time, we cannot say whether a firearm was used on Mr. Merritt because we have no evidence of that. As far as stippling, no stippling. As far as the bullet exiting, no exit wound. And the entrance wound to me, it just looks too perfect round to be a bullet. And then that's another issue. 32 caliber, you put it to the palate of your mouth, I think it's going to exit your head. I mean, that's just, a pallet's only like a 1/4 inch thick. So that was the only thing stopping as far as bone wise, except the skull itself. But a 32 caliber, yes, it should have went through. It should have entered and exited. But in this case, for some reason, that didn't happen. And same thing on the autopsy. Okay, I can see them picking around in his head. And this is another thing that got me. They spent at least 20 to 30 minutes on his head. And all I see him do, because the video camera is so far back, all I see him do was take some forceps, put something on it, and then dump it into the tray. And we're supposed to believe that's the bullet. We haven't seen the bullet and nothing like that. And here's another thing. They've done their own examination of the gun. They cannot come out and say that projectile they supposedly found in his head came from that gun. They can't get a 100% match. Now, to me, that's another red flag. You have the death gun, and you have the object that was in his head. There should have been a 100% match, but for some reason there wasn't.
Let's just back up 1 second, because one of the things that I remember from the very first show, and probably the second or the third show, was something that took me by surprise. The sheriff was known to the mother.
Yes.
And offered the gun back to the wife. The gun that he supposedly used to take his own life, that would be absolutely vitally important in any investigation and corroboration of a suicidal verdict, was offered to the wife before it went back to the station to be forensically examined.
Right. That was another red flag. And when he was questioned by the state police to ask him what he'd done with the death gun, and he said he had washed it down and put it into evidence. Well, why would you wash down and put it into evidence if it's a suicide?
Why would you wash it down full stop and put it into evidence, whether it's a suicide, a murder, or anything else? Right. Whatever it is, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that there's somebody's fingerprints on there, whoever's they are.
Right. They could have, if they would have left it alone, they could have checked DNA, fingerprints, whatever. And see, another thing they didn't do, it could have been 100% clear on what happened was they didn't do a gunshot residue on Mr. Merritt. And here's another weird thing that's came up. Somehow, we don't know how, a blue glove got on Mr. Merritt's right hand. And I didn't notice this until I read the report. And then I went back over the autopsy and I blew it up. I thought it was slippage of the skin from, natural body breaking down. Well, no, I looked at it closely and it was a latex glove. It just wasn't blue anymore because of the decomp. Now, once again, nobody has took claim to who put that glove on his right hand. And Royce was at the funeral and seen his hands. They were uncovered. So when did the blue glove get put on his hand? And that's
where did the blue glove come from?
Exactly. exactly. And see, nobody's came forward on that, and that it just makes me believe that somebody knows something, and they're not going to say it, but they're pointing us in the right direction. Just like on the paperwork we got Astoria's first husband's death certificate. We never asked for that. Everything we asked for had to do with Mr. Merritt. Okay, it's right on that death certificate. One car accident, no witnesses. Now, why would somebody slip that in the pile for us to look at? I just didn't, I still don't understand it. Unless they're trying to tell me, hey, there's something up with this woman, you got to dig a little deeper.
Wow. And even with all of this wealth of information, it's still a closed case.
Yeah, they consider it closed, but like I told them, if they don't get this taken care of, I will show up on their doorstep, and I've already made plans. We leave Christmas night. We'll be heading to Texas, then we'll be heading to Louisiana. That's done in the making, so they better get their shit in order.
Here's the thing,
'Cause I'm not-
Royce. 1 second. When you first, because at some point you must have tried to challenge Astria with some of this information, what was the response like?
No, she had stopped talking to me.
Oh. So you've never had the chance to confront her with these truths?
Mm-mm.
What about-
I never talked to her about it, because like I told her at one time when we were talking, I was like, it wasn't that I was trying to hide anything from you. You told me to leave you alone, and you stopped talking to me, and that's what I did. I left you alone.
And what about her parents? Have any conversation ever taken place with them as to...
No. Her mother texted me one time and told me that I wasn't handling that right. I wasn't sincere. I had bad motives and all. And, that because I had gone out there to her son's family day. He was at a youth thing. And I went to hug her. And she just held her hand up, her stepmother. And she said, no, I didn't want to hug you because you had bad intentions. And I told her, I said, my intentions have always been sincere. And I'm going to find out what happened to my child and let the chips fall where they may. This is what you tell a mother who's buried her child.
And see, here's another thing about the state of Louisiana I don't understand. They won't admit when they make a mistake. Okay, I know of other cases like this in the state of Louisiana that they're worse than Mr. Merritt's case. They have a case of a 14-year-old, and they're trying to tell us he shot himself in the back of the head with a long rifle, 22 caliber rifle. It's not possible. It's not possible. Like I said, suicide is the new homicide.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to do their jobs. And there's another case in Louisiana. It just makes me go ballistic. There's been a man locked up for 33 years for a crime he didn't commit. It was overturned once. Well, it got overturned back to where he didn't get out. Okay. And the thing of it on that case is there's no evidence on this. He was a kid at the time. There was only 2 witnesses. And the 2 witnesses has changed their stories so many times. How could they even be credible? But it's in the state of Louisiana. And I'm finding more and more cases about the state of Louisiana that it just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up.
Here's something else that don't add up. Where did this sheriff, what role has this sheriff played? The sheriff,
What?
the sheriff
I
that...
think
Go on.
I think he played a big role. I think the in-laws called him because they were family friends, is what we've been told. And also, he's the one the first responder that arrived, the chief. of police of Leonville, Joseph Noel, waved that parish sheriff off, saying, "Well, I'm friends with the family. I'll handle this case." And since that time, he has regretted that decision.
Wow.
And so, like, Noel's played a big part in this. Okay, we even gave him a chance. If there's nothing wrong with this case, then prove there's nothing wrong. Everything that we brought up to them, they just keep on taking it. They don't deny it. They don't say this. They don't say that. They just take it. And like I told them, I will be on their doorstep if that's what it takes, and I'm not coming alone. So they better be prepared.
Wow. And I would imagine, when you imagine the relationship that first took place between Royce and Astria's family, that tight family unit that we talked about at the beginning of the show, where they spent a lot of time together. Astria was on the phone to her almost every night when she was on her way home. Royce is the grandmother of their two children. Do you see your grandkids?
No, I haven't seen them in over a year now. At one time, it was 3 years. And I used to see them all the time.
Wow. Do you know, this is one of the most horrific examples of a turnaround conspiracy that you'll ever see. And still, here we have a mother who still can't grieve properly because she's yet to be told the truth. And I don't think for any second can anybody contemplate what has been released so far can be considered to be the truth. You have a wife whose explanation of what took place and how it took place and where she was and where she went to, all quite suspicious. And then the phone that could very well verify whether or not there was that type of communication and conversation taking place, mysteriously disappears. You have a gun that is supposedly used in order to take someone's life, that is washed beforehand being handed into evidence, but it was only handed into evidence, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, is because Astria refused to receive it.
Well, it was in the evidence room, but yes, on incidents like this, yes, you can claim the weapon back, but it's very unusual that happens. But yeah, there's always been a big question about the gun, especially in the death room. The gun's clear on the left side of Mr. Merritt, so that's another issue, and none of it brings up suicide.
But here's the thing. You've got a woman who's lost her husband, you've got a mother who's lost her son, and you've got children who's lost their father. And you'd have imagined, as a family, they would have just got together and shared that grief.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, that family connection has been absolutely obliterated. And yet, no one can explain why.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can probably explain why on that.
Let's go, Mark, very quickly. We've got 5 minutes left.
Okay. My speculation would be they knew Royce was a smart woman, and they knew sooner or later she was going to start asking questions. And I think that was a lot of what they're all worried about, because if you pay attention to Royce, she asked the right questions. And I don't think they could hold up if Royce was able to talk to the woman. I don't think she'd be able to hold up during Royce's question.
Yeah,
I really don't.
Do you know, we've more or less come to the end of the show once again, and I just wanted to make sure that Mark has had the opportunity to reveal all the information that he's wanted to reveal before we close it off for today.
Well, yeah, like I said, the new evidence is I gave the evidence to a mechanical engineer. She done her thing. Matter of fact, she called me. She thought I was giving her a test. Yeah, I've had several experts now, 9 in total, that says it's a homicide.
And yet, the state of where he was killed still considers it a suicide.
At this,
Right.
Yeah, at this time, that's what they consider it at.
Well, Mark, I'd really like to thank you for coming on and giving us and sharing that information with us. I hope our audience have really been riveted to their seats as we've unraveled this little onion that keeps on peeling. But once again, thank you, Mark, for getting involved. I want to leave the last words with Royce. Royce, in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it's all yours. This is your platform for you to tell it like you want to tell it.
Okay. Again, I appreciate you, Kerbin, for visiting this story and giving us this platform. I thank Mark for all of his work. People who are listening, share Mark's story. If there's anybody out there who can help, by all means, contact some of us on Facebook. You can inbox me, Kerbin or Mark. And just, like I said, I just want justice for my child. I want whoever is responsible to pay for that. And I won't stop until that happens.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us again here live on Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio. It's been Royce Eckley, mother of Marcus Merritt Sr., Mark Harper, who is the private investigator of MJA Inc. I just want to thank you guys for coming on Issues Today once again and sharing the story. We look forward to another update as you continue to fight for justice for Marcus Merritt Sr. God bless you and
My
thank
pleasure.
you all.
Thank you.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Do you like music like this shit?
I already did my time. I paid for my
World
crime.
Jam Global Radio. This is clarity.
I want to thank once again Royce and Mark for coming on the show. Don't forget you can join us again next week live on Issues Today. And a big thank you also going out to Patrick Lane for joining us and giving us a bit of a contribution there. Our prayers and our thoughts go out with Teresa, who couldn't be with us today. She wasn't feeling too well. But we look forward to having everybody back on board next week, where we've got Stephanie Babb. She'll be here live on Issues Today talking about her brother,
Do or die.
Brian Babb,
Many rivals.
former
To stay in school, I learned my lessons in the street. There was nothing
veteran,
beat. I was good with my hands.
killed by cops.
I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money.
As another sister fights
Nothing
for justice.
whole game has been
We're out of here.
range. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. I was a drug dealer, sold more drugs than Superfly, but I never got high on my own supply. I'm not proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent, I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb, my brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in common. I was the real Terminator, much meaner than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd chew you up and spit you out like a real alligator, especially all you haters.
The opening statements are going on right now. He could be facing life in prison.
Already did my time, paid for my crime. Already did my time.